Slave narrative was not fully appreciated for a long time in American literature. The study of black literature, which we now take for granted, was something brand new. We have a whole sense of new ways of looking at literature, not just the canon, which also was established and was set up. It's different from what it was, let's say, in 1880 to what it is now. Now we study gay literature, immigrant literature, Jewish American literature, Native American literature, Latino American literature. We understand that American literature is not just literature in English, proceeding, let's say, from the Puritan rhetorical tradition. There are many different American literatures. I mean, if you understand that Stravinsky came to the United States and his work, like W.H. Auden's work produced here, is not considered Russian music anymore, it's considered American music. At this point now, and it's pretty much standard to do Frederick Douglass, at least his narrative. And in his narrative, he demonstrates American individuality, the desire of Americans to fulfill themselves in their own lives for their own purposes. Melville has a similar interest in establishing his own life to himself, I believe, and then to his society. And he finds relationships and makes references to the slave's condition. In White Jacket, he compares the sailor's condition. He actually used the language of the abolitionist literature to speak for the emancipation of the sailor. Redburn, he speaks about slavery because the boy goes to Liverpool, which is the center of slavery, the slave trade in Europe. And he learns there that his father can't guide him, and his father is somehow, by his commercial enterprises, implicit in furthering the slave trade. So it's the conflict between what a father hands down to his son. That essential traditional transfer and sort of experience is damaged or infected with the slave trade. Moby Dick, he talks about the commercialization of the slaughter of whales, the destruction of the landscape, the beauty of the world for commercialism, and he talks about how the sailors, the whalers, are comparable on board their ships to blacks on a slave ship. So there's this whole connection. Now, in the 1880s, Melville, who's pretty much given up writing fiction, works on this book. It's unpublished when he died. And he, of course, like most artists at the end of their lives, he returns back to his earlier themes. He situates Billy's condition in the condition of slavery and the condition of impressment of seizing sailors against their will to work in the British Navy for the interest of imperialism and the British Empire. If you understand the slave narrative and its implications in American society and its consequences and how it's played out in American literature, especially at the peak of Melville's career in the 1850s, then when he returns to it in 1880, you have a better understanding of what's going on in Billy Budd. So that's what I think the publisher understood, which I did not focus on in those clear didactic terms because I was interested in other things. He went in and found my theme and put it in the title. That's why the title is that way, I believe. In coming to this country in 1954, from a society which had its racial problems, Costa Rica, and my parents being black Costa Ricans from the West Indies, you already have an idea of race, but the racism isn't institutionalized. It's a bad aspect of, let's say, Costa Rican society. Even though I was born in Panama, my first memories really are, significant memories are of Costa Rica. When I got my library card, the Queens Public Library in the 60s, and I don't know about it since then because I moved out of Queens, but I mean, in the 60s it was marvelous. There were storefront libraries, and they had wonderful books on American culture and world history. And I was fascinated by world history, I was fascinated by American culture. And I was very grateful to find that it had many, many books, not a few, but many, many books on black lives. So I was learning about black lives as I was learning about American history in elementary school. So I found a confirmation of my own particular experience. And when I went to college, and I went to college for about a year in 1968, 69, then I dropped out for 25 years. But for 25 years I'd been reading and living and traveling and